Guitarland, Mike Heading here. We're going to break down a little mini guitar lesson for you today. This time we're going to be talking about the basic major scale in the key of C. A lot of bluegrass and folk music's in the key of C or played out of the key of C with a capo. So it's really good to know the C major scale. I'm going to break it down in 2 octaves and then show you a bunch of different exercises you can do, adding different chords, doing some scale patterns, a bunch of stuff to just get your creativity flowing, get you picking and moving around, playing the basic chords in the key of C. Alright, here's a basic open major scale in the key of C. Alright, so let's start breaking down this basic C major scale lesson, and we're just going to do the C major scale down the neck with as many open strings as possible. So I think that's a really good spot to start when you're learning a new scale, is always learn it with open strings first. There's lots of other ways to play the scale, more advanced ways, but I think starting with the open strings is the best way to do it. So we're just going to start down here in our standard C chord. Got my ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 5th string, my 2nd finger on the 2nd fret of the 4th string, and my 1st finger on the 1st fret of the 2nd string. Just a standard C chord. So our first note is going to be the 3rd fret on the 5th string. Then we're going to go to the open 4th string, and I'm just going to do it with all downstrokes to start. Then 2nd fret on the 4th string, 3rd fret on the 4th string, open 3rd string, 2nd fret on the 3rd string, open 2nd string, and then 1st fret. So we're going from a C to a C. It's a standard do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So let's go back down those notes. What I want you to practice, at least initially, is 2 things. One is kind of keeping each finger hovering over the frets it's actually going to be playing. I see a lot of people, when they go to start playing notes, maybe their whole hand comes back this way. You'll notice that I'm trying to keep my 3rd finger basically hovering over these 3rd frets, my 2nd finger kind of hovering over these 2nd frets, and my 1st finger hovering over the 1st frets. One, because then I'm going to be ready to go back to my C chord when I need to strum, which is very common. But 2, it's just going to reduce the distance I need to travel when I actually need to play those notes. The other thing I want you to practice is keeping your fingers down as long as possible to basically kind of work on connecting the tones. And you won't always do this in real music, maybe sometimes you are going to want to play shorter notes, but it's really good practice to develop the technique to be able to let all those notes really hang out and not immediately lifting your fingers up, which is a very common thing. I know I had to work on that a lot, is right when I'd be done playing a note, I would lift my finger up, where one, a lot of times you might be going right back to that same note, so you actually want to keep it down because you're going to be going right back to it. But 2, it'll also smooth out your song because you get those notes from other strings kind of hanging out. So that's something I want you to practice while you're going up and down the scale. And you can do it with all downs. You could start doing down ups. Just doing like 4 notes on each one. Okay, so not too hard. So practice up and down that scale. Remember, our scale is just our potential notes, so we're not always just going to go straight up and down, okay? So now that we've got that down, so practice that as many times as you need to, going up and down. You can pause the video if you need to. But let's practice doing some of those notes now with strumming, because it's very common, especially in bluegrass or folk music, to do strumming, to play a little lick or a little scale run, and then go back into strumming. Also why it's so important to kind of stay in position like we were talking about. So let's do a simple pick strum. And then we're going to play a little lick. We'll start really simple. notes of the C major scale. I'm just mixing them up in a different order. So what I also want you to practice, and what I'd strongly recommend, is when you're first starting with these kind of basic improvising ideas where I'm just taking some notes and mixing them up, don't be too critical, okay? I always tell my students and players, don't try and be the player and the critic at the same time. That's too difficult at first. So we just need you to be the player. You can become critical of what you're playing later, but you need to give yourself a little kind of room for experimentation, and if you're too critical right off the bat, it's going to kind of hinder your progress. It's very common to think that it's hard to come up with ideas at first. So that's very common, and you need some time to experiment. So, you know, try some notes, and if you don't land it perfectly, that's okay. That's what we're practicing. We're practicing trying to go back into that basic strum and then play a little lick. It doesn't matter what you play as much as long as you get back to your strumming. That's the ultimate goal. So practice that a bunch. That's really good practice. So a lot of times in bluegrass you'll be doing strumming, and then you'll do a little lick. So that's great practice. Also, if you're like singing or something, you could throw in a little lick. And I'm trying to stay in my position, so then I'm right back to go back to my strumming. Okay? So we've played the basic C major scale, but there's some notes lower that we can play as well that are also in the scale, even though we can't get down to a low C because our lowest note we have is an E. But that E note is still in the scale. So, and then the first fret on the lowest string is also in the scale. The third fret, open A string, second fret, and then third fret is our root. We actually have some other notes down there that we can play. Remember, you don't always have to be able to get down to the lowest root note. That's good practice, but we have some other notes that we can play that are lower than our root note, the third fret on the fifth string. Strumming and then doing a little picking. So practice that as much as you want. So the next thing we can practice is adding some more chords. So that was just strumming on a single chord, right? All on C. What if we added some other basic chords in the key of C? So 3 other chords we can use are called the 1, 4, 5, and 6 minor. So our C is our 1 chord, that's the root. And basically those numbers are coming from the notes of the scale. It's a 7-note scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then back to 1. So those numbers just correspond to the notes of a scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's F. That's a common chord in the key of C. 5 is G. And then 6 is A, so A minor. So the 1, C, 4, F, 5, G, and 6 minor is A minor. Those are really common chords in the key of C. You could play like 10 or 20,000 songs with just using those 4 chords. So those would be really good practice. So what we want to practice is getting back to our target notes. So in C, where are our target notes? It's the root notes, right? Our C and our C up on the first fret, or second string. First fret, second string, excuse me. So whenever lick we play, we want to land on one of our target notes because that's going to help us make the lick sound complete. We can play the fanciest lick in the world, and if we don't end on the right note, it doesn't sound complete, right? So your target notes are a lot of times more important than the actual lick that you play. I like to think of it, it's kind of like sliding into home plate. It's like however you get there, you're safe if you hit that target note. So our target notes again on our C chord are 3rd fret on the 5th string and 1st fret on the 2nd string. So when you're playing those licks, practice getting to your target note. So when we add those other chords, what's our target notes for F? So I already told you one, 3rd fret on the 4th string. Another one is the low 1st fret on the lowest string is also an F. That's like an F bar chord. So F. For G, it's 3rd fret on the lowest string. and then open third string. So those two G's, and then A minor is open fifth string and second fret on the third string. So now we've got a target note for each chord. So let's practice that. So let's practice going from C to F, C, G, C, A minor. So we'll basically go from C to then the next chord, back to C to the next one. So we'll do C, lick, F. See how I landed on my target note there? Lick. Back to C, target note. G, target note there. Here comes A minor. By thinking of my target notes, it makes the lick less important, which is good at first, because you don't want to get overly concerned with the lick. You want to think about how your lick fits in with that bigger timing and with your target notes. So my target notes, again, if I did just the strumming, would be target note, target note, target note, target note, and then A minor, so I'm always thinking of those target notes, because then when I go to add more licks, played a different variation there, but I still played the same target notes. So that's really important. That's something you can practice. Having those target notes is going to make your licks make a lot more sense with the chords. So I'd also recommend taking those and practicing them in a different order, right? So that was C, F, C, G, C, A minor. So pretty simple. But you could also do C to F, right to G, back to C, or C, G. You know, the more ways you can mix up those four chords, the better. So let's try that once. Let's do, how about we do C to A minor to G to F. We'll just mix them up. So we got C, A minor, G, F. So you could take that same concept and apply it to a different chord progression, or maybe if there's a song you're already working on in the key of C, take this exercise and apply it to that chord progression. That'd be really good practice. Okay, so that's C in the lower octave, right? But we also have a C right here. Let's take it up another octave just for a little bit more practice. So that's our first note. That becomes our 1. And then we're going to play 3rd fret on the 2nd string. And we're also going to try and play as many open strings here as possible. We only have actually 1 open string, but open high E string. 1st fret, 3rd fret. Now we're going to shift our whole shape up. So slide your first finger up to 5, 7, and then 8. So we got 8, 7, 5, shift. Let's try that a few times. Shift. Shift. Again, once you get that down, you can mix them up. Just mixing them up in a different order. Thinking of my target note idea, same thing. So my target note is there, or here. So you can take that same idea and apply it to the scale in the higher octave. So remember, at first, don't be too worried about what you're playing. Just, you got to start somewhere, even if it's not. If you can always improve on your licks later. Okay, so You got to start somewhere and don't be too critical. So lastly, let's talk about some folded scales. So a folded scale is just kind of a term for a scale with a pattern, right? So if we play a pattern, let's go back to those numbers. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. I think it's easier if you think of it in numbers. So a basic pattern would be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. So we're going up 3 notes and then back to our first one. Or do it with letters A, B, C, A, B, C, D, B. But I think with numbers it's easier. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3. So you get the idea. So let's play that one. So you can get some really cool ideas. And it gives kind of a great consistency to a ascending or descending line. It's good ear training and just practicing. And you don't have to go all the way through the pattern. You could start the pattern, you know, and then go into one of your other chord shapes. That'd be something to try. Another one would be like thirds. So if you did skipped a note instead of 1, 2, 3, 1, if we did like 1, 3, 2, 4, that'd be. That can sound cool. And all these patterns are just things to get your creativity started. So these are ways and spots to get your fingers moving, get your ear trained, and these are places eventually where you're going to start finding your melodies. So your scale notes are also really important to remember because that's where you're going to find your melodies for songs in the key of C. All right, hopefully that helps you out. All right, good luck.